Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let's get that positioned just a little bit differently there. Hopefully, can have a little better light. Dare to dream, I say. Dare to dream. Who knows? Maybe we can have like good lighting, eh? Maybe we can have good lighting. Let's dare to dream, I say. Hey! Hey, Michelle Markwart Deveaux at the Speakeasy Cooperative, the newly renamed. How are ya? I'm gonna get a little spunky today. Little bit. Good morning, Songwoods Studio. Songwoods Studio. Good morning. Or afternoon. Sorry, it's afternoon here. I don't know. It's afternoon here. Good afternoon. It's like 2 minutes past noon here, so, 2 minutes. The whole 2 minutes. That's the thing. Hey. Yep, it is. Live office hours. Speakeasy Cooperative is going to request to join me just to be obnoxious. Hey, well, once I'm done talking my thing, if you're still here, let's do it. Get in here, man. I'm happy to do that. Well, and actually, as we have been talking about, I would like you to come in here at some point, and let's talk. I would like to talk, Michelle Markwart Deveaux, I would like to talk to you about one of your things that I just think is genius, which is business is pedagogy, pedagogy is business, policies is pedagogy, pedagogy is policies, all that stuff. Yeah, do your makeup now, and then, well, I got a little time here. I got a little something to say today, so, see where this goes. Oh yeah, I know you're hot for that topic. Yeah. And it's like it's my favorite thing. I love that you do that. So yeah, it's gonna happen. Hey, so, good afternoon. This is Dr. Shannon Kutz, and I am here. I am over here at the Voice and the Art of Teaching headquarters in coming to you live just north of Toronto. I'm about an hour north of Toronto, in case you did not know. I'm on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and the Wendat-Néo-Wendat peoples. And I am here doing some work for voice teachers, so independent voice teachers specifically, developing resources and doing some classes. On Wednesday, I just did the my sort of probably one of the most popular classes that I do, which is the child voice class. So that one is, well, I increased it from 90 minutes. It used to be 90 minutes. Increased it from 90 minutes to 2 hours. Still went 5 minutes over. It's fine. Anyway, the recording for that is available now on my website. So if you missed the class and you would still like to get the information, the recording is there. So you can do that. And then next Wednesday, I'm doing a similar class, Anatomy and Physiology of the Expanding, aka Changing, an adolescent voice. So if you work with that population and you want a little bit more of a deep dive into anatomy and physiology, what's happening in the changes in the body, how that affects our expectations or appropriate expectations for that age range in terms of what the voice can do or what we can expect the voice to do, and how that shapes our pedagogy, essentially, and working with that age range. Registration is open now, so you are welcome to join me for that. And if you can't make it live, no problem at all. You will get the recording. So, recording coming. So that is next Wednesday. So those are two things that are happening. And I also, spend some time. I'm going to repost something that Tara McMullen posted a little bit ago about the time that she spends on social media and developing, posts and what are they called, carousels and all that stuff for social media. That's she considers that unpaid, if you will, work. And very interesting post about the emotional engagement and the kind of engagement that's required to create those resources for social media. So that's something else that I do, of course. And so I'll repost her thing presently. Emotional labor, exactly. The unpaid emotional labor that is involved in creating the kinds of resources that lots of folks do create, and especially if they're super like informative and immediately applicable kinds of resources. Yeah. So, such as Tara's, for example, such as Michelle's, for example, and yeah, it's a very real thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's why that post, I think, resonated with so many people too. There were so many people saying, "Oh yes, thank you for saying this," right? And Vocal Health SKB, also another person who is on Instagram there, has just also creating these resources for and such as mine, for example, but out there creating these resources for people. And that are, like I said, informative, immediately applicable whenever possible, all that stuff. That gives us that's a lot of labor. Anyway, that's something that I do. And to bring it around to what I'm talking about today, one of the things that I did at the beginning of the week, one of the posts that I did at the beginning of the week, and I've been trying to do this since January, I've been doing it relatively consistently since January, is trying to get a discussion post going at the beginning of the week, and then kind of taking it apart at the end of the week in the live office hours. So this week's discussion post was intentionally saucy, intentionally spicy, as most of them have been, and intentionally, to grab the attention, of course, and perhaps maybe it got a little high horsey, like I might have got a little bit into a moral imperative there, and I may or may not have called pedagogy bad, which you might know if you have, if you know me at all, or if you have followed me at all. Using the sort of moral judgment words, not my thing. kind of like hurts me inside a little bit to do that. On the other hand, like I said, I was doing it quite intentionally to generate the discussion and hopefully to grab some attention. So, so that it did. It 100% grabbed some attention all over the place. Lots of folks, sort of resharing, and Michelle saying, so were you, sorry, Michelle, you were surprised to see bad pedagogy in one of my posts? Yeah, you're not alone in that. I was also a little bit like, oh, bad pedagogy, but on the other hand, it really gets the point across that of what I was trying to say, so I left it in there, and I left it that way intentionally. Yes, the moral imperative, yeah, a little bit. So, but what that did is it absolutely did grab people's attention, and it absolutely did get lots of discussion going, and lots of people, weighing in, and, I think it offended a few people, or at least a few people felt like, hey, do you really have to be so annoyingly, aggressively moral about this, Shannon? And do I? No, of course I do not. And at the same time, maybe if it hit you a little hard, maybe you think about why it hit you a little hard. So the tone of the post was, hey, if your pedagogy, or if the way that you teach, if you feel that you absolutely cannot teach, or you can't be an effective teacher without touching your students, so if you feel that touching your students in order to be able to teach effectively and well is imperative to your teaching, so if that is a thing that you must have in your teaching in order to teach well, and I said that's bad pedagogy, and really what I mean is I hope you will reconsider that. I hope you will look into that and reconsider some of the following points, and some of the things that people, the reason that I brought this around again, I've been talking about this for quite a while actually, and I have the lives to prove it from 3 or 4 years ago when I first started to go live. This was one of the very first things I talked about, was touching students in lessons, and also keeping in mind that I also work regularly with brand new teachers and with voice teachers who who are young, inexperienced voice teachers who haven't necessarily done the kind of thinking necessarily about what their actions may be, what they're coming into teaching relatively new and not necessarily done the kind of like thinking that comes after several years or more experience, or having having a mentor who might be asking them to do that thinking. So my experience has been that often, especially for brand new to teaching, we come into teaching and we take the things that we were implicitly taught and we bring them into our own teaching. And so very often, especially especially in our higher education, if you will, why did I put that in quotes? I don't know. Higher education. Especially in that environment, we often are implicitly taught that our teachers have full access to our bodies, have right of access to our bodies in order to make us better singers, right? In order to make us better for the audition, in order to make us, more successful, because they have the answers, and so they have the right of access to manipulate our bodies because they are the expert, and so they have that right, if you will, in the room. And so we're kind of, and this isn't necessarily, I'm not even really talking about predatory teachers here. I mean, predatory teachers, that's kind of like the very dark side of things, but I'm mostly talking about teachers with very good intentions and within a system where we're not necessarily questioning things, and where we say, where we come into that system and we feel, okay, this teacher has the answers that I need. I mean, this is all really part of a bigger picture of the sort of top-down teaching that isn't my favorite, and that we're starting to move away from, I think, or at least I hope we are starting to move away from. This is part of this bigger culture of this top-down teaching where the teacher is the God in the room and knows all the things, and even if they have the best of intentions, they implicitly we implicitly take on the idea that we don't have agency over our own bodies, over our own instruments, and that we don't know what's best for ourselves and for, yes, the teacher is the mighty bestower of knowledge, exactly. And so we lose the agency over our own bodies and over our own instruments and over our own voices with a capital V and over our own communication, right? So we lose that agency implicitly. And so this is a whole culture that I think is changing, and I hope is changing, but is still very present. So this is a smaller part of this culture where we as students don't necessarily feel that we are allowed to say, hey, no touching, right? Yes, Kate says, I can't imagine how awkward and awful this must be for those who experience this in some academic environments. Well, I mean, I know a lot of people who have been deeply damaged by predatory teachers. So by teachers, the feed is stopping and starting. Oh, sorry. Hopefully it's not me. But I know a lot of people who have been deeply damaged by predatory teachers taking advantage of this situation, of this culture, and touching very inappropriately and with very much harm. And I also know students who have been damaged, perhaps to a lesser extent, singers, by teachers who have very good intentions, who are not predatory teachers, but who have very good intentions. But this is the whole thing, right? Where we say, and when people say to me, when I say something very strong like, if you feel you can't teach without touching, you have bad pedagogy, people get mad at me, and perhaps rightly so, but also consider why you're mad. Are you mad because I said it strong and because I came off moral? Or are you mad because somewhere inside you think that you can't teach without touching? So consider. If you're mad because I came off moral, and okay, that's fine. But if you're mad at me because I'm telling you something that you need to consider, maybe consider that, okay? And you could be mad at me, I don't care, I got big shoulders, I can handle it. So the thing that people say to me all the time is, yeah, but I asked for consent, right? I got consent. And I need to say this again, right? Yeah, you were mad at me because I came off moral. I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, if you're mad at me because I came off moral, that's fair. That's fair. I was on my high horse, and that is fair. I was coming from a total like moral strong point, but you know, intentionally. So, and Sarah says, I still remember vividly feeling uncomfortable being asked to touch my teacher's abdomen to feel them breathe. Yes, it was a safe place and a wonderful teacher, but still, yes, good intentions. And we also say, okay, but I got consent. So the majority of the folks who I work with are independent voice teachers, and the majority of independent voice teachers are working with non-adults, right? So what I want to be so, and teachers do this in master classes all the time, right? If you ask for consent in a public forum, in a master class, they're not giving you consent. You are in a power differential in that system. And the person who is asking for consent is in a very powerful position. You have to be an incredibly self-possessed, confident teacher student with incredible agency to be able to say in a public masterclass to the masterclass teacher, to the master teacher who has been brought in to help you sing better, how much agency and incredible like internal power do you have to have as a student, as a young adult in an academic situation in public to say, no, don't touch me, to the master teacher? That's not getting consent. That's not consent. That is a terrible situation. So I've seen many teachers do this. Yes, exactly. If you're in a position, yeah, and fantastic teachers with very good intentions. And so this is part of the reason that I am being so like intense about it, is because, you know, intentions are one thing. Oh, and sorry, let's go back to consent. I'm going to get to intentions in a minute. So the other thing is that if you're working with non-adults cannot give consent. So if you're working with adults in an independent studio and you are very clear about, you know, the kind of movement work that you do, the reason you do it, and that you are giving those adults the choice to say way in advance, not in the moment. Do not ask in the moment. Please don't ask in the moment and say, I got consent. That's not consent. That is me as a student going, I want to say no, but I can't possibly hurt their feelings. Oh, especially if I was raised, you know, female. I'm 100% going to be in the moment going, oh, I can't possibly hurt their feelings by saying no in the moment. Even as an adult, even as a nearly 50-year-old person, I still, yes, oh yes, as a safe place as well, right? So even as a nearly 50-year-old adult person who is pretty self-aware, I am going to be in a teaching situation. If I am in a room with a teacher and they say, oh, do you mind if I just blah, blah, blah? In that moment, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to hurt their feelings. Even me, I'm not going to hurt their feelings. Give your adults, if that is the way that you want to work, and if you have, can I please say as well, if you have been trained in movement modalities, so, you know, Alexander technique, if you have yoga, if you have massage, if you have, like, there are lots of movement modalities out there that are really beautifully work with singing and with singing lessons. I mean, lots of modalities out there that are just beautiful with singing, and support singing lessons and help singers. And I mean, these are beautiful modalities. And so if you have that training, hopefully as part of your training, massage therapists, I know for sure, I just talked to my massage therapist about this yesterday, have this kind of training where they're talking about having you know, understanding the power differential understanding, especially in massage, you're lying on the table, I'm standing up over you, you're naked, I'm not, like there's a big power differential, right, in massage. So understanding that and getting consent way in advance when the person has the choice in advance, so that it's not like, oh, I guess I can do it right now, right? So this is great business. It's pedagogy. Yes, put that ask on the intake form. How do you feel about touch? This is the kind of touch I do. This is the reason I do it. This is what I was trained in. This is where and why and in what situation. Yes, in Feldenkrais, only certified practitioners should be touching people anyway. Exactly. And Seth, I'm so with you on that. Awareness through movement activity should always be done with everyone guiding their own movements. I so agree with that, because that is part of the way that we learn best. It seems to be anyway. Students often have the people pleaser, absolutely, mentality. So yes, they will agree to be touched even if it makes them uncomfortable, 100%. Then discuss at session before any sort of work happens. I totally agree, Michelle, where in advance, so people have the ability to consent, adults have the ability to consent well in advance, and to make the decision for themselves well in advance in a non-emergency or urgent situation, right? So this is well in advance, and then and also giving them the right of refusal in the moment. So you say well in advance. Also, if that day, when we're working in this way, if you would rather not, you are allowed to say no all the way up to and including when I'm actually touching you. Like this is you I just like in other situations, I want ongoing and enthusiastic consent all the way through, and you are allowed to withdraw your consent with your however way you want all the way through. So I also know with I work with a speech language pathologist who does a laryngeal massage. And I don't work with him, I go to see him, and he does laryngeal massage, and he, he's trained, and we've talked as well about he is also looking for, he's scanning you as he's working, because he's working in my neck, y'all. He's like digging in behind my larynx and around my larynx. He's working up into my jaw. These muscles are strong and they're annoying and they get in the way. And so he he's helping to release them. So he is also scanning and feeling in his own body to see what my comfort level is, right? So he's there. I'm signing things in advance. He's telling me in advance, anytime you want to say no. But he also will pull up. He'll also stop, even if I'm not saying no, because he's like, no, your body is saying no right now. This is too much for you, right? He's trained in that. So we, as voice teachers in general, are not trained in that. We're not trained to be like, not necessarily trained to have that trauma. And to see that and to scan in that very specific way. So the other thing about consent, and so right now I'm talking about adults specifically, working with adult singers specifically. If you are, Sarah says, sorry. If you are in a position of trust and power, the person in the room with less autonomy is not going to say no unless they have been given, yes, the tools to say no, exactly, unless they have the tools. And then Elise says, to the point of consent, I think it's important to also address this is a safe space statement as a teacher too. We don't know what safety feels like for our clients, only they know for themselves. Yes, this is something that I've heard Megan Durham talk about as well. I've heard Michelle Markwart Deveaux talk about as well. Something that I certainly have heard is something that I also very deeply believe. I used to be like, okay, we're creating safe spaces. Well, we can't create safe spaces, right? There's no way to create a safe space for all of the people in our studio. There's just absolutely no way to do that. So what we can do, though, is create spaces of consent. We can create spaces of inclusion. We can create spaces where people, where there are tools for you to tell me when things aren't safe anymore, or how I can make them safer, right? So we create the spaces where there are tools and communication, where those things are in place, right? The tools for consent are in place. And then Joe says, I've never ever had to touch a student or have them touch me in almost 20 years of teaching. Yeah, I know. So I have, only the student can say, yeah, if it's a safe space. Absolutely, I agree. And Michelle says her makeup's ready now. Yeah. Let me blather for like 3 more seconds here, too, and then. So one of the things to address here as well is that when we're working with non-adults, there is no consent. There's no ability to give consent. There's no possibility to give consent. In many constitutions around the world, that is the reason that we have some of the laws that we do around sexual behavior, around how we treat minors. That is the reason we have those laws, because we recognize that non-adults cannot give consent. And so the majority of the independent voice teachers who I work with are working with non-adults, right? So we've already talked about how hard it is, or how challenging it can be for an adult to give actual consent. Now, if we're in a studio and saying to a child, even a very self-possessed child, someone who seems to be very self-possessed, and saying, okay, I'm going to touch your tummy now to see whether you're breathing or not. No, you're not going to do that. If we're one of the reasons that I first started to talk about this publicly and do lives around this was that several years back I saw a video that was kind of going around the voice teaching circles of a very sweet, adorable child who was having a voice lesson with someone, and the teacher kept like grabbing their jaw and changing their jaw and like moving their jaw around. And like, I was like, what? No, what is happening? No, that child cannot consent. You can't grab a child's jaw. You don't know what's happened in their lives. So here's where the next thing comes in. Our intention can be the most pure, the most admirable, the most high, noble intention on the planet, and we may have seen and felt incredibly good things happen in our own bodies by having been manipulated in some way or moved in some way by a well-meaning teacher. Our intention is this much of the equation. It's this much of the equation when it comes to touch in the studio. When it comes to lots of things, let's be honest. But it's like this much, right? Oh, Seth says, having people grab my jaw felt intrusive to me as an adult. Yeah, and super unhelpful. I know. Dang nabbit. So we have this like, we kind of give ourselves permission because we know our intentions, right? So we're like, yes, but I just want what's best for this student. And I know that if I just put my hand on their stomach, then they're going to be able to breathe against, they're going to move their stomach wall out against my hand, and then they're going to really get the idea of what it feels like to have that deep breath. Which there's some problematic stuff there too, but whatever. Like they're going to, it's going to teach them deep breathing. So then I've got this like super, I know that my intentions are super good. I know. And so we give ourselves kind of a pass to be able to like, touch people in our studio. But here's the issue. It's not about your intention. It's about the person who is receiving the touch. It is about what the actual outcome of your touch is, right? It's not about your intention. So we can have the absolute best intention in the world, and sometimes our intention, and none of us has pure intentions, right? We have intentions to be like, I know that if I can just do this, I can help this singer to accomplish their goals, and at the same time, I'm gonna look pretty good. Right? Like we never have pure intentions. We're humans. We never do. So there's always going to be some sneaking in there, something like, sneaking in there, which is fine. That's totally fine. But it doesn't matter even if we have the purest of intentions, right? It doesn't matter. The impact is what is important. So the impact of touching someone who has had consent boundaries crossed before, who has been taught that they don't have agency in their own bodies, who has been taught that they don't have agency over their own voice, who has been taught explicitly or implicitly that they don't know what's good for themselves. The impact of our going into and manipulating bodies is far greater than the impact of our intention. Far more power in that situation. I also said in my post something about the fact that touching students, manipulating bodies, isn't great pedagogy because that's not the way we learn best. Now, do I have actual, full on, all the science behind that? No, I do not. I am not that person. However, there is a case to be made around motor learning that we do learn best, especially around something like singing, where everything's internal. We do learn best by discovering it ourselves, by finding the motor learning ourselves. Our bodies remember it better. There is lots of evidence for that. Our bodies remember better if we do it ourselves. So if we are directed toward learning something ourselves, our bodies remember it better than if we are, for example, moved into a position or, even feeling something on someone else or something along those lines. So Sarah says, collaborate with folks who do have a license to touch and make it voluntary work. Like I work in the physio clinic on campus. Exactly. That's also something that we can do, right? So there are lots of folks who do have they have the ethics behind them. So they've done this work, and have the licensure and have the associations behind them to have this, to do this work well. And there's always a mirror. I mean, that's the other thing too, right? Like the other thing that goes with this is just, part of the reason that I say it's bad pedagogy is because I say it's bad pedagogy because if you believe that you can't get a concept across any other way than touching, I want you to seriously examine what you think of yourself as a teacher. Like seriously examine your pedagogy. What is behind you thinking that you can't give a good directive? What's behind you thinking that you can't use a tool like the mirror or like, what's that called? A band. What's that thing called? TheraBand. Or like, I don't know. There are so many tools out there that we can use. What is the thinking behind the only way that I can teach this concept is by touching someone? That's where I say that's bad pedagogy, right? And I might actually use it and say, morally, that's just not great pedagogy. Because you think that the only way that you can communicate this concept to the student is by manipulating their body or touching them in some way? You need to rethink that. If that's what you think, you need to rethink that. You only have one tool? You only have one way to do the thing? No, you don't. You're selling yourself short, and you think you have you're limiting your pedagogy, right? Use your words, use your words, use your words. Not too much though. But yes, get a good directive going. Find a good movement, right? Get a good tool in there. As we have learned from being 2 years or however long we've been online now, terrific teaching can happen without you touching the person. And terrific learning can happen. What happened to me around being touched and voice lessons? Oh, are you saying is there a feeling there that I am talking about this because something happened to me and so I am reacting to it? I have not had negative touch in voice lessons for me personally. I haven't, but I do. So I haven't had predatory teachers or folks who have I've had wonderful teachers through the years, and some who have used some touch at some point. I don't remember having touch when I was not an adult. I do have had, you know, lots of stuff, lots of different kinds of touch, and I've worked with voice teachers who had Alexander training, who were Alexander trained, so there's like some touch in there. I mean, I have had touch in lessons myself as an adult. I don't remember. I started taking voice lessons when I was 13, and I don't remember anything negative in my voice lessons all the way through before I was an adult, and I didn't have negative voice lessons as an adult either. However, I have had a lifetime of being in a culture where I did not have body agency. So I've had a lifetime of being in a culture where I did not have body agency, yeah. So I do have, you know, this awareness of now coming to the point where I'm saying, okay, so that was a thing that I took on implicitly, that my body was not my own, and also that my body was not a good thing. I grew up in an evangelical culture, evangelical church culture. So like, bodies are not good. The heart is deceptively evil above all things, and who can know it? You know, like, I grew up not trusting my body, not trusting, not listening to what I felt was good for me, and not being allowed to want anything. So I grew up in that culture of not having bodily agency. And I did say this, you know, I said this in the child voice class that I did on Wednesday, where we were talking about working with children and teaching agency to young children, right? And starting to work through agency of the voice with young children and agency over your body with young children. And I said at some point, like almost near the end of the class, I said, you know, what would have happened if you, as a young singer, as a child singer, as a teenage singer, what would have happened if you had had and been taught bodily agency or agency over your own voice from the time you started taking voice lessons? What would have happened for you if you had been taught that, and if you had been, you know, and if you had been given that gift of agency over your own voice, and of knowing that your voice was your own, and that you did not have to rely on someone else that you had everything you needed within yourself to be the singer you wanted to be. What would have happened if you had been taught that as a child? And that was a very pivotal moment in the class. So Gabriel says, I've been teaching voice for 16 years and I've touched my students maybe a dozen times. I don't think that discounts me as a good pedagogue. I feel no shame. Yeah, I'm not saying, sorry, Gabriel. Again, I'm getting a little moral about things, and it is what it is. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to feel badly about it. I'm saying that when folks feel that the only way that I have to teach this student how to, you know, how to do, have a specific coordination or how to do a specific thing, is by touching them, especially if I haven't set up a consent, you know, a space of consent. And as we talked about, I don't think that consent is possible with non-adults. So when I'm working with adults, and if I have not set up that space for consent, if I feel that that is the only way that I have in my toolbox, then you need to figure out what's going on with your pedagogy, right? That's when you need to figure it out. Sarah says, it's not about you though. Your memory of those moments are going to be vastly different from your students. That's true too. Yeah, I did say that as well earlier, Gabriel. You know, our intentions can be incredible. And we all know our intentions. We think, okay, my intention is really good here. But it's not about our intentions. It's about the experience of the students, right? It's about the impact of that touch. Yeah. So, hey, Michelle, are you still out there? I don't know if you want to come on in here. Let me see. How do I do this? I don't know if you're still out there or not. Here we go. Invite. Boop. I think I invited you. I don't know. I invited you on. Oh, there you are.
I am still out here, and I do
Yeah.
want to come live with you because I am super. I have to turn up because I don't hear things. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm just on my phone. I didn't do any fancy work
Gotcha.
today.
Also, Facebook can only hear you. They can't see you because I'm not
Okay.
on devices as per
Okay.
usual. I'm so
So, but Instagram.
actually, sorry, I might just say goodbye to Facebook now. See you later.
Come on over to Instagram, everybody.
Come on over to Instagram. Exactly. Let's just end that, and let me just see what we said here. Oh, fun, right? Yeah. Catherine says, I think of ourselves as good or bad teachers. Exactly. We need to question whether we're effective. Yeah. Gabriel, I know teachers who believe that. Yeah. Gabriel said, do you believe there are teachers out there that believe the only way to teach voice is by touch? I know teachers who believe that. Yeah.
I just had an argument with one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And also, Gabriel, like I'm also talking to teachers who have never thought about it, right? So I also, oh, it is crazy, 100%. But I'm also like, I work with young voice teachers, like inexperienced voice teachers all the time. Hey, Callie, like all the time, right? So, and very often they have not thought about it, right? And so they've been taught through touch. And they have implicitly taken on the fact that this idea that they have access to their student's body, that they have the right to touch their students' bodies, right? They've taken that, and so they're not thinking about it. So that's part of the reason that I'm talking about it. Yeah. It's crazy.
Can I bounce off that for Gabriel?
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm assuming your pronouns are he, Gabriel, so forgive me if I'm wrong on that. So this is the reason why I'm listening in today is because Shannon and I work together closely. And when I saw that moral imperative carousel of hers, I was like, where the F did that come from? Like literally Shannon all the time is like, don't say good or bad. Don't use moral imperatives, da, 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 da. And I was like, this is so off brand. Like what is going on here? But I trust Shannon because Shannon and I have worked together for a long time. So I'm like, I'm just going to wait, see what we're going to do. So what I think it's a perfect example of, though, is how much our pedagogy, this is for independent teachers, but even academics, our pedagogy and our business practices are not taught through intentional digging out of what it should look like, but passed on through an oral and physical tradition that is just assumed to be correct. Yeah. And so this is a historical narrative going way, this is built into pedagogy from 200 years ago, 300 years ago, right? Like this is what happened. We went to estates and lived in mansions with voice teachers and had our 20 minutes every day when this was an extremely Western classical understanding of what pedagogy is. So then that idea gets wrapped up into voice pedagogy everywhere. And people just assume, oh, that's what you do. Like that's how you do it. And I learned it from someone that I trust. To Shannon's point about the good intentions, right? To Shannon's point is many people have been touched in their voice lessons without consent and not cared. Yeah. Right? Like I have no problem that my voice teachers, there's only one time that someone touched me that I didn't want them to touch me. And I said so, right? So it's very interesting though, because we also have the flip side where it's like, well, I felt completely fine with all of the teachers touching me. They didn't even ask and I didn't care and it worked and it was great. So if you're coming from that perspective as well, then you're not you personally, but you, whoever, right? Then again, that goes to the intention. And when it comes to the business as pedagogy, this is why people have shitty pricing. This is why people don't have solid intake forms that actually communicate the value and what a voice lesson is going to be like. Yeah. This is why people don't have a good relationship with marketing and sales. This is why. It's because we have this oral and oral and master apprentice tradition of independent voice teaching, and dare I say academic voice teaching, that implicitly teaches this is how it should be done. And what I love about this particular topic is because it is a hot button topic. You know, it's hot enough that it's going to get people to actually say, wait a second, maybe I can, maybe there's a different way.
Yeah.
And so sadly, Gabriel, I'm so thrilled that you have not had horrible experiences in this area, especially as a young male, because I mean, just a couple years ago, there was a person who was in our field, and except you and me and Shannon, right, Gabriel, and everyone else listening in on this live, we're the only ones that are great. I get what you're saying. I think it's not that they suck. I think it's that they genuinely think that they're doing it right. Because I'm fine. I turned out great. Yeah. Right. Like they say, well, I turned out great. My career did what it needed to do. My singing did what it needed to do. So I guess this is what we're supposed to do because it worked for me, which inherently is kind of wrong too, because like we all know my larynx doesn't function necessarily the same way that Shannon's larynx functions.
Totally. Well, and also all of the experiences that your students bring into the lesson, right? Like how many times, especially I'll just talk as a woman now, how many times have I come out of a situation and then 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 years later been like, wait a minute, that was freaking wrong. What? Yeah. How? What? So I didn't know at the time. And perhaps if I had been taught to listen to my body, I wasn't, but perhaps if I had been taught to listen to my body and to like trust my instincts, I would have been able to negotiate that situation a little bit better. But like at the time, I didn't even realize that something was happening that was beyond my consent, right? I didn't realize that I had consent to give, right? In so many cases. So now like 10, 15, 20 years later, or maybe the next day, I'm like, oh, frick. Someone came through my consent barrier there. I did not want that to happen, or I would not have done that thing if I had known, right?
Absolutely. So Gabriel, I have a question for you. How did you get your sound character? Because you said it's an issue of having sound character, which I agree with. It's like knowing your integrity and stuff. So tell us a little bit about your character process and how you came. So we do this in all, like Shannon knows this, we do all of the core values work, all of the inner voice work, all of that kind of work in order to run our businesses in the work that I do with people. So one of the questions is that it's like, how did you get to your core values? Yeah. And are your core values adopted because you think you're supposed to have them? Yeah. And also just like that, there's so much research around how we literally change. Our personalities change over time. And that is a real thing that for a very long time, people didn't believe, right? Like, oh, can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, there's neuroplasticity and there's experiential. I mean, this is what post-traumatic stress disorder is, right? It's when you have an event that boom, changes your personality, your brain. So so
lots of therapy. Oh, see,
exactly.
I know.
So I think what I want to pull from what you're bringing to the conversation, because I think it's really valuable, and I hope that I can't really ask consent in the middle of a consent talk on IT. So I'm going to do something, and you need to tell me if it's not okay, and forgive me if it's not, but I'm going to do a forgiveness over permission thing right here. What is valuable about what you're bringing to the conversation is you're slowly but surely showing us how important that deep inner work is.
Yeah.
And how much work it takes to get from I'm unclear to I have sound character.
Yeah.
And I love this about what you're bringing to the conversation. And I just kind of want to like connect it all for anybody who might only be seeing the comments and being like, what's Gabriel? He seems combative. Because it's not. It's you chose that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the groups of people that Shannon speaks really well to and is speaking to today is she's just trying to get more people to do that.
100%.
Let's do more of that. And, you know, blame me because I make her do that.
Well, and let me read for the comments because this video will
I'm
go
so
up
sorry.
with the comments. So Gabriel, when Michelle asked that question, Gabriel said, how did I find my sound character? Lots of therapy, Zen awareness practice, daily meditation, 12 steps for process addiction, lots of reading and devoting my life to being a sound character. Like that is a lot of inner work, right? So without that work, would you be where you are? And so this is absolutely what Michelle is saying. Like, I think really the focus of the work that I do is with teachers who have not necessarily done that work and who are new to teaching and or yes. Yeah. And Gabriel says, my bad experience made me determined to not be an asshole. Exactly. Sometimes
Gabriel is my kind of people.
Yeah. But also sometimes like if I didn't have any particularly bad experiences in my voice lessons. I mean, some teachers were better than others for sure, but I didn't have particularly bad experiences in my voice lessons. So like, I didn't really necessarily feel the need to examine the way that I taught when I first started to teach, right? So like, why do I need to examine the way that I taught, right? So again, coming back to what Michelle was saying when she first came in here too, and especially if we're not really like the self-examination kind of person, which I'm not really, right? Mm-hmm, not really. Ew, that's so gross. I don't love that. But that is like, those are my peeps. That's who I'm trying to talk to, right? Like, I get it, right? Yeah, had therapy or introspective modalities support them. Yes, exactly. So So I'll tell you, Gabriel, I only started doing like therapy like 3 years ago. Yeah, I was in my mid 40s before I thought I needed therapy, before I realized I needed to unpack some of
I remember that conversation.
Michelle might have been one of the people who told me, do you think maybe you need some therapy? I was like, no. And then my husband was like, you might need to get some therapy. Now you get my passion. Yeah, exactly, Gabriel. Yeah, I should maybe put a little caveat about where I'm coming from too, right? So people have that. I want to just go back to what Sarah was saying too earlier, story time. I hadn't thought about it, which is something that we were talking about, so much that I created an official quality control consent form about the use of touch in private lessons. At the place of what I thought was love and safety. And then I learned better. But so she was doing it though as a like, you're gonna get touched. Give me your
you're gonna
right?
This is what you're signing up for.
Exactly. Rather than like creating what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. And Karen's here too. Wow, you ladies amazing. And Seth says this is the same as parenting, but that's another topic. It's so true. So true.
Is it a different topic though? Really?
Is it?
It's yeah, it's so interesting. Like business wise, when we think of it this way, right? It's like, how many businesses honestly, other than businesses where you implicitly know you're going to be touched, like the chiropractor or the massage therapist, how many other business training or how many other businesses do you go into and expect someone to person handle you? Right? And it's such an interesting thing. I'm going to bring it way back. Do you remember, you probably don't remember, but do you remember a million years ago, it feels like a million years ago, it was only like 2 years ago, when I did that interview with voicelessons.com about the validity of online voice lessons?
Oh yeah. And people
people
lost
lost their shit.
loving shit.
But I'm gonna connect it. One of the things that people said, like commenting in the live, was, but when I'm online, I can't touch them. And I was like, I just thought to myself, because I've been teaching online for very, like, I don't know, 2014 maybe, or 12 or something.
Yeah. Let's see.
Malachi was born, my daughter was, so maybe 2012. So that was so shocking to me. Yeah. That, like, that was going to be the reason. Like, I get the whole, like, oh, I don't know how to listen space. And at the time, you have to have a very different approach to the conversation, because the technology was not where it is now. But I was so shocked that was one of the reasons people literally were like, I can't people handle my people. Mm-hmm. And how am I going to show them this? And how am I going to show them that? And I'm like, you have them touch themselves. You use
maybe
like, but it was, I mean, even then, you know, and that was so outside of the context of what we're talking about right now, but it just goes to show how deeply ingrained in kind of the zeitgeist of pedagogy touching is.
Totally. As quotes, I turned out okay. I know, right? Go, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah. And people are fine. Like, I don't think you're trying to, I think people can actually be fine.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I think we can be fine and still need to examine the things that we still need to examine the things that we have taken on, right? And all of the beliefs we have, and how that's affecting the students we are working with. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, to model that, so it's interesting because you said something about, like, legal consent, right? Like, you can't give, like, a child essentially cannot give legal consent, or cannot give consent inherently. And so back to kind of wrapping in the parenting thing, the person that said that was like parenting, it's like, but we actually have a huge opportunity to be one of the people in this small human's life that teaches them about consent.
Yeah.
So knowing that they can't legally give it, but we can still use language that teaches them how to say yes and no.
And teaches them body agency, right? Like, that's
yes.
over our own voices, right? Like, that was, like I said earlier, that was like a pivotal, like, lots of tears moment in, like, my lecture class, that were like, it's just an online class, and we're all like, because what would happen if your first voice teacher taught you that you had agency over your own voice, and that you had everything you needed in your own voice to do the thing the way you wanted to? So what would happen?
I love this. Meredith Colby talks about this. She and I had a great conversation, and I'm like, I'm gonna change my language from here on out. So you know that I call my singers in my studios clients. I don't call them students.
Yeah.
And she calls them all singers. She doesn't use the word students either. But I've always done that just more kind of as a professional level, because I have a lot of adults, and even, I mean, I teach kids too as well, but just generally speaking, I prefer to have a more client. I want to communicate that. I want to communicate that type of relationship.
Yeah.
And she just so eloquently and beautifully in our conversation was like, your singer doesn't need you.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, let's talk about this. And she was saying, you know, I hate when people always call their singers their students, because it inherently sets up this, again, the power dynamic that there's one person who knows more than the other person. Mm-hmm. And that knowledge is the thing that's going to bring this person up, and not that they wouldn't be able to do it without this other person.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's so many things in the independent. I just said one more thing because I know you want. It's so interesting to me how the independent studio world constantly insists on mimicking the academic model when it is completely different, and we have so much opportunity to have a completely different understanding of what we're doing, a completely different modality and a completely different impact. So one of the things I'm going to start kind of being like, hey, everyone, maybe don't call people students anymore. Maybe call them clients.
Yep.
Maybe call them singers. Maybe call them performers. Maybe call them voice users. But I'm personally going to really work to just remove the word student.
Love that, Gabriel.
My vocabulary in my own. I mean, join me if you would like to. Keep me accountable if you see me accidentally calling students, singers students. See, like I just did. So sorry, I'll shut up now. I know you want to say a thing.
No, and I'll take that one even a step further. So I also have been very intentional in the last couple of years now to not even say my singer or my student. I say the singers I work with, the teachers I work with, the artists I work with, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So that I'm taking the possessiveness out of it as much as possible as well, right? The sort of, oh, so what do you call yourself? That's a good question, Catherine says. And Wendy LeBourne uses artists. Yeah, the artists I work with.
Yeah, so Catherine, I love this question because I've thought about this over and over and over again. Yeah. So I call myself a voice teacher and a voice coach, but not because of the power dynamic. It's because of SEO. Because nobody is going to be like I'm looking for a vocal guide on the internet. And this is where marketing can get a little bit unfortunate. And that's why you clarify on your website, because you need to have, again, this is a business. It's not academia. So you have to kind of use the language of the culture in order to market. But then once they get to your website, you can actually break down that language in the conversation. You can say that. You can say, I know you found me because you were looking for a teacher, but let's really talk about what my role is in this relationship. And that can happen in your initial fit lesson and then through exactly how you're working with that client over time.
Yeah.
And that, that is, I wish it was different, but the way that the crawl works with all of the browsers is it looks for the words that people are looking for. So that is, to me, that's one of the unfortunate things about internet marketing of all sorts is the way that we have to use an uncultured, because they don't know what they're looking for. They know that they want movement, like something to be different in their voice. They know that they want to sing or they want to try acting. They know, and then if they are a seasoned singer, they have always used the term teacher, right? Or whatever. So you've got to you kind of trudge through the common best practices words. But I really do hear you on that. Yeah. So Gabriel, I'm gonna push back at you because here's the thing. We aren't students of people. We are students of singing. You can always and forever be a student of voice, a student of the music, a student of the instrument, a student of singing. But it's when we put that personal power dynamic over it. I know I don't ever do that. I never, ever. So I think that is something. I can't see the I'm trying to scroll comments because I saw someone say something smart and now it's gone.
Well, Sarah saying where I'm at the college that Sarah's at, we are learning managers, still students as well, but I do see the term client coming into the academic fold.
Good.
Catherine's saying she loves the term guide. Gabriel says, I like the voice teacher student. Seth is saying, in higher ed, it's tough for me to get past these terms, but I try to communicate verbally. Yeah, that my goal is for the students to gain autonomy, for them to guide their own journey. Yeah, and Gabriel saying, I always let my singers know I'm forever a voice student. And yes, we're pushing back a little, as per you.
Gabriel, I did my Enneagram like a gazillion years ago. I have no idea. Right now, I spend the majority of my time in the Clifton Strengths modality because I'm a certified coach with Gallup. And that is not as much of a personality assessment. Clifton Strengths is more like a motivational and how you think modality, which I prefer because, again, personalities change. So I'm going to take that as a compliment and believe the best of you. Believe that you are complimenting unto me right now, but I don't know what that means.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that whole discussion around, because our language reflects the way that we think, right? So our language, the way that we describe something, how we, it reflects the way that we think about the thing. Right?
Now you're getting evangelical. Out of the mouth, the heart.
Of course. Well, as much as I try to deconstruct it, it's still in there pretty deep. I can't.
To the recovering evangelicals.
To the recovering evangelicals. So yeah, so I love that, I love that rethink of the language, and we kind of go like, oh yeah, so I am saying this, I am using this specific language. And so what does that say about what I actually believe about the person? Like internally, do I actually believe that? I don't think I actually do want to communicate that. I think I actually want to communicate something else. So I'm going to change the language around the way that I'm describing XYZ.
This is so good. Can we go down that but we're just bunny trailing all over the place. Can we go to the bunny trail of language for a minute?
Let's go.
Let's go.
We'll put it, at some point we can do a separate one where we actually
where we just
let's do it.
Let people know what we're going to talk about and not just the shit on Instagram all morning or afternoon because you're in the East Coast. But so here's something so interesting about language. We are in such a fantastic time right now of a new approach to language and the hurt and the beauty and the way that language shows up in culture and in the world. And I'm so grateful for that. And I kind of feel in my nuggets that I'd like to say to anyone listening is like, you will never be on top of language. Give yourself a ton of grace. You will say something wrong, flat out wrong. You will say something dumb. You will say something hurtful and not empowering. You will use the wrong word at the wrong time for the wrong people.
Yep.
And then you will apologize and you will do something different and you will move on with new language. So it's interesting because I think, where was it where I saw the word, this is one of the ones that gets me. When people say this causes harm, I get a little like, no, I think we need to really understand what harm is. Because words don't cause harm. Words cause hurt. They cause pain. They cause discomfort. They cause feelings of shame. They cause feelings of anger and embarrassment. But harm is a physical thing. Harm is when someone is physically hurt, physically damaged. And I think that in our zeal to protect people and say that causes harm, we're actually doing a disservice to peoples who have been systemically, literally harmed, and by not making the distinction. And so I think you said harm earlier. I don't know. I slip up and say harm too, because it's in the cultural language, but that's one of the words that I really think deeply about is like, let's not make words harmful, because there are people who have literal violence against them every day.
So I have never thought of harm as being related specifically to physical harm. So that is
look it up.
Right. I mean, there we go with language again, right? So that's interesting. And now I know. I had never thought of it that way. I thought of harm as being something that is negative in general, right, to a person, and something that is so yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, that doesn't mean you have to stop saying it.
Yeah, no, but I can.
You know what I mean?
By what I'm saying as well.
And I think too with language, you know, it's so easy to police other people in language, right? And I hope I was not meaning to police your language when I did that right there.
Okay.
That was just an example to me. What I find is like, there's a fine line between like, hey, maybe rethink this, and tone police.
Yeah.
And I get really tender around those edges, because I find that a lot of times it is privilege in and of itself. True. To be able to use the word, tell people what they should say and what they shouldn't.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know, that I think that we should do a separate one on that, because I think it's good, sticky, messy work that we all have to do. But to your point about like consent and touch, and I mean, this is like who was saying earlier about their intake form, right? Where they were just like, I'm going to touch you.
Yeah.
Instead of flipping it to,
yeah.
Sometimes touch is used in this environment. Let's have a frank conversation about what that would be like for you.
Yeah. And I'll just pop in here too. Anna's saying, like Liz Jackson Hearn says, we are speaking in drafts.
Yes. Absolutely. That's Anna, right? Hi, Anna.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, Liz is great. Liz is great on this. And man, I see people getting so hurt about messing up.
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, I messed up. I said the wrong thing. I had the wrong thing. And, you know, I want to encourage people that's like, yeah, you did. And then you change it. So like for a really long time on our website, we had differently abled.
Right.
Because that was like what you were supposed to say for like an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And then someone wrote us and was like, hey, just so you know, no. And I was like, oh my God. And so I looked it up and I'm like, oh, we say disabled bodies. Okay. Just change it.
Yeah.
Just change it.
Well, and there are lots of folks in the disabled community who do not like disabled bodies, actually. Right? Like they're
I got it from the website, and that's like the hardest. I think that's the hardest thing is like, okay, who do I look to? Yeah. Because you never want to do for without doing with, right? Like that's just obnoxious. Yeah. I'm going to do this thing for you, even though you're not involved with it at all. Like, okay, that's problematic. But it's interesting. It's just, I don't know. I'm done. I think I have exhausted my.
It's all good. Well, we have been talking for like 45 minutes, so it's all good. But so, and Sarah says, just to clarify, was sometimes touch is used in lessons. Are you okay with that?
Sorry, Sarah. I was being hyperbolic, and I did not mean to paint you.
No. And I misinterpreted a little bit too. So we're kind of misinterpreting. Sorry, Sarah. But yes, how we set up consent forms can also be problematic, right? Like in how we set up consent in the studio. I mean, and even when it's coming from the best of intentions and we're gonna screw up. It's so true.
Okay, so
true.
To wrap it up, why don't you tell us about how we can purchase? What is the next thing that we can purchase from you? Antidotes.
Michelle is my business coach. Can you tell? Well, I did discuss at the beginning. So the next thing that's coming up for me is just the yes, and often parents fill out those forms. Yeah, so true. So like parents are talking on behalf of their kids, and we want to have
Catherine,
kids, right? Yeah.
Say on the form that you want the kid to fill it out.
Yeah. Or yes, exactly. You want to have the discussion with the kid in the room, right? Please take the money. Yeah, you want to have the discussion with the kid in the room. So next one up is just expanding an adolescent voice pop-up class. And then in March, which is something that I'm doing for the first time, I'm doing an intensive in March. So 5 days of a class every day in March. So that'll be like we're talking about autism in the voice studio, and then we're talking about ADHD in the voice studio, and then we're doing something that I'm so excited to do, which is teaching while neurodivergent. So we're going to do a little one like that. So that's going to be, yeah. And then creating more inclusive voice studios with more of a bent toward neurodivergent students, creating more inclusive voice studios, and then a discussion class. So
I love it. So my version of teaching while neurodivergent is having a lot of reminders.
So oh my God, sign me up. I know the registration's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, that's great.
About these ones. Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about them because like all the stuff that I have put into place for me for what I do, but then also all of the stuff that I work with students. I literally just had someone email me like yesterday saying like, I'm autistic, and like when I'm in the class or when I'm teaching, and I like, so I lay out everything perfectly for my lesson, and then I'm in the lesson and they ask me a question and it throws me.
Oh yes, and they're like, you changed the rules. You can't change the rule that I decided about this lesson.
Yeah. So now what do I do, right? So yeah. And ADHD brain is very different from autistic brain. I mean, often they're together, of course. So we're just going to talk about the two kinds of ways that those things can manifest in students, and also then how working with those brains as ourselves in a teaching situation. And then you have, because I'll just turn it back for you. You have How to Run coming up, right?
Yeah. So we're always having them. We're always open in Speakeasy Cooperative, which is a great place to start. But yeah, we're selling. Sales page is up. We are now taking applications and having the interview calls for the next cohort of How to Run Your Voice Biz Without Hating Your Boss. You are your boss. That's a joke on purpose. And that kicks off, like, first class is on April 5th. That's a 10-month intensive coaching and educational, high touch, handhold. Let's start the important journey of getting your business right where you want it to go. I'm really excited this year because last year we revamped a bunch of the material and really up-leveled on the money portion of it, up-leveled on the marketing portion of it. And then Sarah Campbell and Kristen Coffee Rondo, who are on the team, they're coaches in there as well. And so I'm actually going to just hand over the branding module to Sarah. She has her branding boot camp. We do a lot of crossover work. There's been a lot of people who've taken both branding boot camp and How to Run, and then that kind of makes magic. So Sarah and I are in discussion about how to kind of combine that within the program itself. And that's an investment program, but if you happen to be listening and you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do a real hard thing and get all the scaffolding around my business. I don't know, we could drop I don't know where you drop sales pages on Instagram, but we can
go to SECA,
just go to the speakeasycooperative.com or go to the link tree. It's the link tree on the Speakeasy Cooperative. That's me, the Instagram. And my thing is, like, if you look at it and it scares the hell out of you, that is a good indicator that you should fill out the application and have the call. I know that sounds funny, but it's true, because fear and excitement are the same chemicals in the brain. And so feeling scared, you should do it.
Sometimes.
That goes for anything you see with Shannon too. If something makes you fearful, maybe it's not fear. Maybe it's anticipation and an opportunity to learn. So
there you go.
That's it. Sales pitch.
Love it. Okay. So this, I think, has been the longest live office hour.
You're welcome.
ever.
You're
In fact,
welcome.
it might actually be a live office hours. Like, it might actually be hours.
For the first time ever.
I might have got it actually over to the thing. So yeah, come back and talk to me about like pedagogy. Come back and talk to me. Hey, Anna, thank you. Come back and talk to me about like policies, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it.
Anna, I got my eye on you for H2RA, especially because we have some shenanigans coming up. I know your business.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. I'm so glad.
Thanks, Catherine.
Terrific. All right. Take good care. We will.
You end it, right?
I
don't know how. I can't.
Yeah, I
you
end
have
it.
to end it.
I'm ending. Here we go. Bye.